Good morning and happy Friday to everybody listening. Happy August, happy weekend, happy everything. It's been a weird week. I feel like there was a full moon or something because, like, everything and everything, like, happened. And not like good things. I feel like I was really moody, not for nothing. I mean, it's not even my time of the month, so I'm not even going to put that out there that that's why, but something was in the air. Like, I don't know, everything was going wrong. But here we are, another week down, and hope everybody has had some time put aside this weekend to relax and just ready to, just refresh this weekend. And hopefully, you have made some time to also watch Love is Blind because that has been so crazy. First of all, I think it's kind of funny that I feel like this season is very different from honestly the US version because like even the way they talk to each other, I feel like it's very I don't know, they're not like afraid to say how they feel, but I also like I think it's the accents too that kind of twist that for me, but that's besides the point. So, anyways, I wanted to take the time to talk about the fact that I literally graduated from high school a little over 10 years ago. How crazy is that? Like I can't believe it's been 10 years since high school. Like I feel like it's been a long time, but it's also flown. And I think that that just applies to everything in life, but it doesn't feel like it's been that long since then. But it also has, you know what I mean? Like it's if you dwell on it long enough, you realize that it really is a long time and a lot of stuff has happened then. A lot of stuff has happened since that really fun day, walking up to the stage, getting my diploma, taking a picture. So much has happened, and not even just like the people in my life, it's like just what I'm doing now, what I wanted to do at the time, and just the fact that it's been so out of the cards for me. Like, there were a couple things that I told myself I wanted to have, and it was the career of my dreams before I turned 30. And also, I think my master's by the time I was 28. And then I wanted to have my first kid by 30. And I also wanted to have a house by 30. Let me scratch that. I didn't want a kid. Like, having a kid was not in my schedule. I totally got that confused. But getting a house by the time I'm 30, that stay tuned. Because I don't know how that's going to go down. But so many things I've been thinking about just this whole week, like reminiscing and just thinking about everything high school. And like, it was such a high point for me. And I don't want to say it was like the prime of my life. Like, it wasn't the peak of my life. I think like the peak is still yet to come in my life. And I feel like having that mindset has been like super good for me because I don't want to think that I reached the high point like ever. And I think that that mentality has been with me since high school. And I think I've kept that too. But I wanted to say a few things. I kind of like listed down the top 20 things that have been in my head about just like what has changed since high school and also what I've learned and what it means for me now. And I think it's just super insightful. It's really nice every now and then to just like go back and reassess your life because you're like, one day you could be serving at Ruby Tuesday. The next day you're married and pretty much like sort of content with life, but also trying to navigate what's after. And that's kind of the situation where I'm at right now. But let's rewind. Like, let's go back to 2014. Like, I can't even believe that it was that long ago. But I think the very first thing that comes to mind with just everything that I've learned since high school is that not everyone will stay, and that's okay. I saw this quote somewhere, And it said, friends are there for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And that is like so true. Like looking back at it, I it's kind of sad though, like if you think about it, like when you graduate, you're like, oh, I'm going to keep these friends forever. And it's peaceful. Like I think graduating high school to me personally was a peaceful time where I was like, okay, everyone in my life is who is meant to stay here for the rest of my life. Like I wouldn't be upset if everyone that I was friends with just stayed being my friends forever and I never made new friends again. And boy, does life like take a 180. I think it's so crazy how many people have left my life, but also how many have mysteriously returned and we cross paths again. I think the beauty of what I've learned in the past 10 years is because someone leaves doesn't mean they'll be gone forever, but it also doesn't mean they will come back. I think there's two pieces to that statement that sometimes you just outgrow each other and that's okay. Sometimes, life just puts you two in two different directions. And I've said this in, I think, 2 episodes back from this one, where I was talking about just like speaking how you feel and like thinking your feelings out loud and just like having uncomfortable conversations with people and how sometimes that can, push people away or, this whole time, like growing up, especially in high school, like you would ask adults things when, they're like, why are you and so not friends anymore? And like the answer is we just went separate ways. But that I think was never truly understandable until I graduated and like actually understood what that meant. Like it really is such an open world when you graduate that people go different directions. And that's kind of like, it brings me to point number 2, which is some people you meet later in life will be closer to you than the people that you've known basically your whole life. And that's okay. I feel like I've ended every single bullet point with, and that's okay. But it's true. Like, I think we have such a cliquey attitude about things in high school and like even in college, we are kind of more social, but I feel like we always kind of lean back to what we've known. And that's a very common, normal person thing to feel. But I think that the fact that it's never going to be just like a straight line of like you're going to keep the same people for the rest of your life. And I think that for a while, it was hard for me to even accept that and be okay with it. And like, people will leave and it shakes you to your core and you're like, okay, you've been through worse before. You'll get over this obstacle and things just happen like that. And I just think that in the entire 10 years of all the times I've had like uncomfortable situations, like questionable friendships and relationships, I just constantly am reminded that people are there for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. Like I said earlier, there's many reasons why people enter your life, whether it's by you starting a new job, you starting a new club, or you start dating somebody new and you are welcomed into a totally different friend group, lifestyle. So many factors go into it. And I think that because of that, we don't often think about the fact that like maybe the direction you're going won't be in the same direction as somebody else. And it's a scary thought. Like, I think another piece to it is not to dwell on it, but like also expect that it's possible it could happen. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is just because we're older doesn't mean every day is still not going to be clumsy sometimes. What a very not clear statement. And this was me just, brainstorming my thoughts. And I think what I'm trying to say here is sometimes we're still going to have a mess of a day, and that's totally okay. I think as high schoolers, as like younger kids, college students, like we have this, at least to me growing up, I had this like thought in my head that, oh, the adults know it all. They have their life together. You graduate and you're like, you have no clue what's going on. And then, you're like, oh, at least when I'm so and so's age, it'll all make sense because they have their life put together. And honestly, it's not the case. And I think that's humbled me many times, like more times than I can count. Like looking up to somebody and just having a conversation with them and them just like saying like, listen, my life is not perfect, trust me. And it's been humbling in that sense because I think that it makes everybody more human. And I think it's been such a huge lesson in the past 10 years that like it still sticks with me, that it's almost to the point where if I'm having a bad day, I am okay with it. And sometimes we need a day like that, like when we're so focused on keeping the same routine or like working towards a goal. Sometimes we're just always on and always stressed and always tense. Like sometimes having that clumsy day just it's that like push to throw you off, but also to just like take a minute and relax and just like take care of yourself every now and then. And like, not for nothing, I feel like I've been getting sick more often this year for whatever reason. I'm going to blame the weather because it's been craziness in Jersey specifically. Like today and yesterday and the day before, I think the morning was like 55 degrees. And granted, I'm not complaining because I'm so over the humidity this summer, but it's been cold. Like end of August, I'm already wearing jean jackets. Like that's not normal. I'm, slightly concerning, but I have been getting sick a lot and I feel like it's challenged me in ways to not plan such a busy weekend and like prioritize myself and like try to just take care of myself when I'm not having a good time, when I don't feel 100%. And that includes getting myself to not go to the gym and like not feeling bad about it, honestly. Like that was another thing. I feel like I had issues like having a free day and feeling bad about it because like either I could be spending the time to spend time with other people or it just wasn't productive. But I've learned so much in therapy, just like understanding that a rest day is also productive because you're putting in work to rest yourself. And that has stuck with me forever. Next, I think this one is huge. College doesn't define success. And I have had so many epiphanies in the last 10 years about the fact that like people just come from so many different paths. And I've said this before, but I work at Disney and it's just really nice because sometimes I would have conversations with coworkers about like where they would come from. And it's just incredible how many different paths led to the same company. And it's not just Disney that follows this process. Like it's everywhere. Like people will cross paths with you that either have had more education or less education, but like more work experience. And I just think that it's something so beautiful that people's journeys are just so unique from each other. And I think that's added such a level of, uniqueness and just like what it is to be an adult, because it's made me realize that like kind of tying into this, like people are certain ways because of how they've grown up. And I'm not even talking about like college at this point. It's like, it's more about the fact that how you grew up, how you were raised doesn't define how successful you will be. And that, plays into both directions. Like, let's say you had a rough childhood, you couldn't afford college or you failed out of college and, you had to go a different route just to get to where you are now. And the other end of it is, you came from a rich family, like all of them came from some sort of Ivy League and you're like the next child, the next prodigy child to go to another Ivy League. Let me tell you something, that there are people out there who have not gone to college once and are literally executive directors now. There are people who were first in their high school class, went to college and went to an Ivy League and did fairly well, and they're barely making it by. I think that's humbling in a sense to think about because it doesn't define success. Like college, yes, like it does give you that degree, but I think that people oftentimes like lean onto the fact that they need a degree to be successful. And it's not exactly the case. The most, I guess the biggest example that I can think of is like coding. And listen, I'm not discouraging anybody. This is a huge disclaimer. Do not think that this is me saying like don't go to college. But if it's just not in the cards, like there's still a path, you know what I mean? Like I've heard so many success stories of people who they went to college. Some people did, some people didn't, but they learned coding on the side, and it is that kind of field where the practical application matters. Like how you practice coding is really how you get your knowledge, because there are, like logical things like theories and coding practices that they teach you in college, but it's not when you're literally like doing something and putting something together that the work kind of builds knowledge for you, because it's not something that, if you know the knowledge, if you know the basics, you'll immediately be able to code like a game or something. No, like it takes practical application. And I feel like that just applies to so many different things. So tying into the fact that college doesn't define success, another thing that I've learned in the past 10 years is that money doesn't measure happiness either. And it's a very like obvious statement that money can't buy happiness. I mean, arguably it can. Like it's good to have money sometimes, but I don't know, like I've had situations in my life where I was basically like just working to pay my bills, and I feel like I've had some of the happiest moments in my life because it's just that constant reminder that you don't need to be rich to be happy. And like it's crazy because the problem is when you make more money, like you almost are inclined to increase your costs of living. And I think not many people realize that they're in this cycle, because I've been there too. Like I would make more money and then feel like all of a sudden I can afford Pilates, which is like 25 a week. And that adds up. Like if you do 25 times 52 weeks in the year, like it adds up. And I'm not saying that that's like a prime example, but it could even be something like, okay, you made like 20K more in this new job. You can now afford to have a car with a monthly payment of like $700 a month plus whatever your rent is. It's not many people realize that we kind of just like allow ourselves to lean into a more expensive life. And honestly, I feel like normally that is the behavior. Like I think it's even harder to get yourself to spend less when you make more money, if that makes sense. Like living on a budget and kind of like being frugal, I think is the harder part about being an adult. So I think that, yeah, just the actual meaning of money can't buy happiness. Like everybody knows that saying, but I don't think it actually hit me until I was living it and knowing the struggles and like getting to this point and just even navigating now, like all my bills and all the things I have to pay for. Like it's still a lesson that's reminding me constantly that I don't need money to be happy. Like for me, I feel like my whole life, what has made me happy is quality time with the people I love. But, money it's been a thing. Like it's been a topic with myself, and I'm sure it's been a topic with a lot of people in our age. And especially when you graduate college and like have to deal with paying for your own place and like meal prepping and like just everything involved with being an adult. Money is important, right? It helps pay the bills. But besides that, like there's still ways to be happy that doesn't require money. And I think like especially growing up, I've lost a little bit of connection with that statement because there's so many things you could do that don't cost a single dollar that honestly really make you happy. And that's one of the many things that I've learned in the past 10 years, that like the actual meaning of it and actually feeling that money doesn't make you fully happy, like money doesn't buy the happiness, that feeling itself is not something that one can feel like when you're still in high school, because, like, you're not paying for anything. And I think like once that comes up, it's just a constant reminder that it's not what you need. Next, another thing that I think has been super, I guess, important to me and a huge lesson that I'm still kind of navigating now is it's okay to change course, planned or unplanned. And that is something that I've struggled for so long too, because I've always had a plan about my life. And granted, having a plan helps you to manifest things. Like, I think telling myself to get a dream job by 28 with a pay that I'm like okay with, or like getting a house by 30, or like, I don't know, like being able to reach a senior position by the time you're 28, or, like successfully, and it doesn't have to be even work goals, like successfully traveling to 40 countries. Okay, 40 is a lot, like 5 different countries by the time you're 30. And that's like since high school, all right? That's a lot of time to travel 5 countries. But I digress. It's okay to change course. And I think that because we make plans, it's also important to expect that not everything will go to plan. And that applies to so many more things outside of just like your personal plan, your personal life, like even in friendships, relationships, like living situation, everything can change in a matter of a second. And I think that sitting with that took me a very long time, but also a very necessary lesson. Like, I've had situations where I thought I was going one way, or where I thought a friendship was going one way, and just out of nowhere it took a 360. And you kind of have to just, it's something that like you have to just say like it is what it is, and it just happens, and you kind of just go from there. Now that it's changed, now that it's different from what you planned, now what? Like, you can't change the fact that it's changing, right? Like, you can only control how you react to it, how you adjust to it. And that has been so huge in my life since high school. And like, I feel like high school, we're so used to, classes start at this time. You have this history, then math, then reading, then lunch, then it's just a constant schedule. And I think like we still have the work, we still have a daily job to attend to, or like our side hustle, whatever our careers kind of ground us to a certain routine, we still have that. But I feel like outside of that, there's a lot more, I think, outside factors, life factors, like people want to hang out. There's so many other factors that go into like what you do in your free time, that it's okay to change directions. It's okay to also like change your mind about things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think that also ties into the next point, that who we are in high school doesn't define who we have to be, if that makes sense. Like, in high school, I was a very musical girl. And mind you, I wish I was still this musical, but unfortunately I'm not. But just because, I was a musical girl, and like just how my actions were back in the day, it was very like quiet. I never spoke up on how I felt about things. That doesn't mean it's something that we need to keep carrying to now. And even if we do, like, it's okay. Like, we can recognize it and work on it. And it's okay to, be let down sometimes, just based on how you experienced life in high school, and just in general, like, your situation is so unique. And you have to remember that when we're in high school, we're kind of like locked in with the same people, like people you've grown up with, people from the same town. And it's very, believe it or not, like restricted. Like, it's restricted to that specific town. And when you go to college, when you grow up, like, you start to meet people from literally all around the world. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing, but also something that was difficult for me to kind of like wrap my head around, because not everyone is going to be like you. And on that same note, not everyone is going to change the same way you are. So that's another lesson. And I've also learned that adult life is fun, but super expensive. Like, I cannot believe how expensive everything is. I just can't believe it. Like, I I remember fries being like $2 in high school, and maybe that's an over exaggeration, but even getting fries nowadays is like it like hurts my wallet. Like, I remember, growing up, my parents used to get a lot of takeout and they would just buy food, and like $400, they would spend 400 in Costco, because granted, we're a family of like 5, but that 400 sits so different with me nowadays. I'm like, damn, like my parents really be spending $400 on groceries. Honestly, it was like once a week, once every 2 weeks. And I still cannot believe that that is how much groceries were at the time. And granted, like I was in high school, I can't even imagine how much it costs for a family of 5 now, but it is so expensive. And I'm just so shook about that, because we don't get that awareness in college. I feel like, at least my experience, that once you grow up, like everything just, it's all about paying stuff off. And I feel like that's nice and all. Like, being an adult is nice because you have the money to do whatever you want. And even if you don't, there are credit cards there. Hashtag don't get into credit card debt and don't have bad habits, but they're there. And it's nice, but like it costs so much. And I cannot believe that, when I was in college, like serving and working at Ruby Tuesday, my weekend, like income would probably range from $400 to $500. Multiply that by like 3 or 4 for the month, and it's like, like 1,200, 1,500. And that seemed like so much to me at the time. Like, bruh, that is like half of my rent nowadays. Like, I can't believe how exponential everything has seemed. And it's such a lesson. Like, I think that we often forget, for people who are listening, like either just turning into their early 20s and also just like relating to the fact that it has been 10 years. I think there's so much expectations that have changed with regard to like how much everything is. And even like right outside of college, I like couldn't even believe how many trips I went on, because looking back at it, I don't know how the heck I spent that much on all these trips. And like, it's just part of it. It's part of like the realization that adulting is expensive, but that kind of like just ties into everything else. The next thing is a little sad, but also very true, and a huge lesson that I'm constantly learning and constantly being reminded of is the fact that life can change in an instant, whether good, whether bad. We truly don't know what tomorrow brings. And it's, I think, also grounding to think about that, because it kind of like helps stay in the moment. I think that it's like kind of humbling in that sense, and kind of like a warm blanket, because although sometimes like people get anxiety about what tomorrow brings and like just planning ahead, it's a lot. Like, it takes a toll on people and adults in general. And I think that sometimes being reminded that life can change in an instant, it's just, I feel like the reminder that I need sometimes to just like let go of the steering wheel for a second, let go of the brake for a second, not literally, but like in life, and just sit back and enjoy and like have fun every now and then. And not all of life is serious, just things like that. And there's been so many like things that I feel like a part of my increased anxiety has to tie with the fact that we're growing up, getting older. And like, it's not just us getting older, our parents are getting older, grandparents, our pets. And it's just that realization that, which again ties into my next lesson, is that we're not going to live forever and our bodies are not going to stay young. But I say that in a less like depressing way, but more in the sense that like, it kind of drives me to one, spend time with people I love, and two, to take care of my body, take care of the people around me, like try to encourage everyone around me to live, their best life in a healthy way. Like if my pet, if like Leo is, I don't know, like having a bad diet, like try to give him something a little bit healthier, or, choose to give him supplements and just little things like that. I think it's just a reminder that we aren't gonna be this young anymore, and like every second that passes you're getting older. And it's just that reminder that like the sooner that you start taking care of yourself, the better the quality of your life is in the long run. You know what I mean? Like start taking care of your nails, start taking care of your hair, your skin, your skincare routine. Like putting on sunscreen is the most basic thing, and I still think that's an issue for a lot of people. And no judgment at all, but it does increase chances of skin disease, like something going wrong, skin cancer. And I think even just that basic, like taking the time to put on sunscreen, it's such a small change, but it can go such a long way. And that also ties into vaping too. Like I still don't understand why people vape and why they still do it. Like it literally is just as bad as cigarettes. And I think as a generation, not even like, I feel like millennials have a bigger awareness of it, just because we're kind of like the in-betweens between cigarettes and vapes. And like, we know what cigarettes have done. While Gen Zers, I think there's still a huge stigma around like being cool with your vape. And I just, it's like super cringy to me. I'm so sorry. But that's what it is. Like, even vaping, like that's gotta go. I still don't understand why it's still in the market, and I still don't understand how like that's even something easily accessible. I feel like people just don't realize that there are things that we could change, and it's such a little change. And I think that that's still a lesson for me, because honestly, like, not gonna lie, I have a lot of spicy food in my life, and I'm pretty sure it's damaging me in some sort of way. I know the amount of times I'm having spicy food that it's not a normal level, and it probably shouldn't be at this level, but it is. So that's something that I have to work on. But just a reminder. And speaking of just like overall physical health, I think another amazing lesson that I have learned that I'm still navigating is, just because a piece of clothing doesn't fit you doesn't mean your body is bad. And I think, I don't know if there's another way to say it, but just because your body doesn't fit a certain mold doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that like your body is ugly. And that again, like I feel like I'm just starting to embrace my natural body. And I feel like it ties a lot with like just kind of not caring anymore. Like I feel like early 20s, I'm like, oh my God, I want to be skinny. I hate my belly. Like I have to work out all the time. I have to stay skinny, like skinny this, skinny that. And I'm not saying I gained weight. Like, I'm not even saying that like skinny or overweight, whatever your weight is wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. I think the general like lesson that I'm trying to get with that point is, if, a mermaid shaped dress doesn't fit you properly, it doesn't mean your body is horrible and you need to lose weight, because there is a possibility that mermaid dresses just don't look good in your body shape. And I think that it's a hard pill to swallow, especially if like, let's say, I don't know, like the current trend right now, which Oh my God, like low rise jeans. I physically can't, I can't imagine myself in low rise jeans because one, I have a belly. Like, it's not, I feel like it's very much like you have to have a toned stomach, and I do not have a toned stomach. But low rise jeans, it can match everybody, but like if you're not confident to show off your stomach like that, there's no problem in sticking to high-waisted jeans or like sticking with what you're comfortable with. Like, I think for the longest time, I kept thinking I needed to fit a certain mold, and that included having a flat stomach. And to be honest, like genetically, I'm convinced that it's the hardest part on my physical body to lose. And I think like lately, I've just been embracing it. And I think just like feeling physically healthy is way more important than like having to have ridiculous diets and like starving yourself just to get to skinny. And I don't know, I just feel like just prioritizing how you feel physically was like such a huge lesson for me. And it's even to the point where like, I don't know, like for example, mini skirts. I feel like they squeeze my stomach in very unflattering ways that I've honestly just gotten rid of them. And like personally, I'm very self-conscious of my stomach. So I've picked shirts and clothing nowadays that like doesn't focus on your stomach. And I feel like there's so many TikToks about it too. Like, just explore it. Like, there's so many different ways you can elevate your closet to benefit your body shape. And I'm still researching on that too. But like, even just like peplum shirts. I don't know if you guys remember peplum shirts. Basically tight around the chest, and then it kind of like flares out below your like rib area. And even though those shirts are outdated, like there's clothing like it that's more modern, and especially in like the business casual direction, I've been trying to experiment with like different ways that I can better suit my body. And that's kind of how I've been lately. And I feel like it's only been recent that I've been feeling like I just don't care anymore about like one, what other people think of my body. I think the most important thing is you like your body. Like, we're only this young for so long, which I've said earlier. You know, if you want to just spend the money that you have on like the food that you love, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're okay with the fact that like it does have those consequences. Like, I think another lesson that ties into that is like every action has a consequence. And boy, does that sit in my chest a lot, because I've even unconsciously done things that like didn't sit well with other people, and then it led to, one thing led to another, and then like you don't even realize that like even your non-actions have consequences. So kind of like taking a few steps back before I get into that, and appreciating our body more. I think I've just like learned this lesson that as long as my body feels good, I would rather have that than like struggling and being mentally tired. I think like at some point in my fitness journey, I have had like times where I just had low energy and I just didn't enjoy it at all. And that just ties again with just, you know, if you want to go to the gym, like go to the gym because you enjoy it, not because you're trying to like burn off what you just ate. And it becomes a toxic relationship that I've said before in many episodes that I'm still working on. But that's just another lesson. And kind of tying into that is that your mind has a farther limit than your body. And when I say that, like I'm trying to say that it's good to keep challenging yourself in whatever way life pulls you. And the biggest example and like thing that I can think of is keep learning, keep challenging yourself. If there's something new you want to explore and do, if you want to start a small business, if you want to like, I don't know, try to make a board game from scratch, if you want to make sourdough bread like I have been. Fun fact, my sourdough starter is named Eduardo, like dough. I don't know why I just said that, but whatever. We have so many options in life to like try different things. And I feel like if you feel like you want to start or try something, give it a shot. Like, I think it doesn't hurt you to explore a new hobby or explore a new job. And, again, every action has its consequence. You just have to be like okay with the fact of like, let's say you want to try a new career route, you know, you should be okay with the fact that maybe your salary won't be the same as it is now, or maybe you won't like it. Like, it's risky, but it's kind of like you have to weigh it out and see how you feel. And that's another lesson that I think I've learned in the past 10 years, that like sometimes you just have to take the risk and see where it takes you, even if it's not the right direction. Because sometimes like taking the decision and realizing that you don't like it is still like rewarding sometimes. And I think it's honestly like even more important when you try things and you don't like it than trying things and it goes well, because that's where you're challenged and that's where you're put to the test with your mental grit and how you handle things. I think that's where you grow the most, when you're in like uncomfortable situations or tough situations, and it really makes and shapes you as a person. So that is, I think, like one of the best parts about how it's been. And what I want to carry with me, like moving forward, is honestly all of the above, but most importantly, like the mental grit and just continuing to challenge myself. I think when we get into this point, I don't know, this is just me personally, but like I was able to get my master's during COVID. And I still feel like I was learning a lot at the time. And work is great. I'm still learning a lot as well. But I feel like after work, I'm kind of still navigating like what can continue to make me happy, what can continue to just like keep the light on in my soul. Like finding a passion and finding a purpose, I think is like the next big thing for me. And getting married was like honestly the short-term goal, because that in itself, like planning a whole wedding, if you go back to my episode about planning the wedding and all my wedding learnings, it's a lot. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and honestly, like for a minute you're in this little bubble of that's your one singular goal. And I think I loved it so much because when we were in college, high school, like all these short-term goals were what kept me grounded. Like, I have a midterm next week, gotta study for that. After that, I have a project. After that, I have a final. It's like you had a set direction of goals and things that you were looking forward to. So, yeah, I think that's the general direction of where I want to go. I think there's so many things currently that like are questionable in terms of like, is that the side hobby that I want? Is that the direction that I want to go in terms of like starting a side business or like playing video games? There's a whole long list of things I am working to figure it out, but end of the day, it's the same lesson that still carries with me, that honestly, it's okay to change course. It's fun to plan, but just plan lightly and see where it takes you. And again, I think that also ties into like getting a house and everything that comes after marriage. Honestly, like I'm about to turn 28, and if you asked me what my wish was, I literally would have no clue. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. I was so excited for this episode because I've just like can't believe that 10 years have passed. But if you're in it, if you're also 10 years ahead of graduating or just barely starting, just enjoy it, honestly. And it's like just be in the moment, be present, and just enjoy it. And yeah, that's all for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will catch you all next week.